Today I'll be joined by actor Khris Davis. You may have seen him in Judas and the Black Messiah, the new Space Jam, but today we'll be talking about his brand new film, Big George Foreman. Congratulations.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Are you a fighter? Because you made it look easy in the film, and on Atlanta, you kind of beat the shit out of Donald Glover.
Am I a fighter? I would say I am a fighter, but am I a fighter in the sense of being a trained boxer? I wasn't before this film. No. So yeah.
What drew you to this role?
What drew me to this role was, I think, the emotional context of the role, that it had so many variations on growth, and the deep-rooted love and self-identity that George Foreman had from the time that he was a kid all the way up to when he won the heavyweight championship belt again. And I thought that spectrum would be nice to play with all those challenges that life gives him.
That's what I was thinking, because I'm a little older than you, and I'm too young to remember those big, historic Foreman, Ali, Frazier days. But I do remember when he came back, and I was like a little kid, and all the old heads was like, yo, George Foreman's back, and he's big as hell. Like, do you remember when he made that comeback in the 90s, or?
You know, it was interesting. I don't remember when he made the comeback in the 90s. All I remembered was that he was the grill guy, the Meineke guy. And when I thought about him as a fighter, all I knew was that he was the hurdle that Ali had to get over, you know? And I thought that when I saw the script and I saw how in depth his life was, and I read his autobiography, and I felt like his autobiography could be like 20 different limited series episodes on who, you know, I thought that this guy was the most incredible person that I had ever learned about.
How did you become George?
I didn't become George, right? Because I'm not Mr. Foreman. I could never be Mr. Foreman. What I could do was try to give a proper representation of his experience at that time, to emulate some of his essence as best as I could. And if I could do that, get as close to that, then I think that I was doing the right job. Because the thing about Mr. Foreman is that he's like a deep lockbox. You open up one box and there's another one. You open up another one, there's another one. So you never really understand who he is if he doesn't want you to, you know? And all I had were all these interviews that he did, whether it was boxing as the heavyweight champion or the Olympic champion or even as a pastor. So I didn't have any personal information on him. There were no interviews of him just talking to his wife or hanging out with his children. I didn't have anything like that. So I had to go down to Texas for 3 days just to see how he lived, just to see how he talked to his children, how he was when he was in his personal space, to try to get an understanding of that, because we weren't telling a movie about a series of interviews.
Right.
Now, if that was the case, then I could pinpoint what the interviews were like and I could emulate that. But what I had to do was I had to tell the story of the human being. And the human being is the person off the camera. So I had to find that essence by going down and spending some time with him and try to marry the two ideas together.
Do you find biopics to be more difficult?
Now, I don't find them to be more difficult. I think that there's a little more pressure to it, especially when there's somebody as well known as Mr. Foreman. I mean, you could do a biopic about somebody who lived 100 years ago, but you know, they're not around. So I'm sure you have a lot of artistic license to do whatever you want. No one's gonna question that, right? But Mr. Foreman is still around.
And he can fight.
And he can fight, like for real, you know? So then there's that aspect, right? Was I ever a fighter? I had never had any boxing training, so I have to get into the ring, not only do this human, emotional integrity, I gotta get into the ring and I have to fight like Mr. Foreman. And he had a very specific and unique style. And that was probably one of the most challenging parts of doing this role for me.
What about physical transformation? Did that help you get into the role more?
The physical transformation, the first half, the physical transformation felt pretty standard for my own physique, because Mr. Foreman and I, when he was the heavyweight champion, even the Olympic champion, have about the same weight, the same height, the same build. Yes,
sir. He looked like he was so much bigger.
No, man. So they called him Big George Foreman, you know, because at that time, he was about 225 pounds as a heavyweight. That was heavy as a heavyweight.
Yeah.
You know, they were coming in at 205, 210. He's coming in at 225. It's huge. And he was, what, 6'3"? And some change?
Right.
So that's a big guy.
It's a big guy.
That's a big guy, especially standing next to, Joe Frazier. That's a big dude, man. So the transformation in the beginning felt pretty natural. It was the second transformation that I had to go through that felt insane, that I think helped me tremendously telling that second half of the film, going from 225 pounds to 275 pounds in 5 weeks.
Did you ate and you bulked up like that, or did you have like a suit? Or?
No, man. That was all me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they wanted to put a fat suit on me. And at first they didn't. So we took 6 weeks off filming. So we filmed in the first block, younger years, heavyweight champion years. And then we took 6 weeks off for me to gain weight. The first week, the producer's calling me, right? He called me like 2 days in and was like, how's your weight? I'm like, man, it's been 2 days. So like, I'm not 50 pounds heavier in 2 days.
Right.
So, a couple more days go by, he calls me again and he's calling other people trying to get them to check on my weight and X, Y, Z. So I called him, I said, hey man, what's going on? And he said, I just got out of a meeting and we're talking about fitting you for a fat suit. And I got upset because here I am.
Let me eat.
Well, so I had a plan, right, from a nutritionist to go 4,000 calories a day on days when I wasn't working, 5,000 on days where I was filming, 6,000 calories a day when I was training. So that I was never going to make weight. Right. So I had to readjust the program, and I bumped it up to 7,000 calories a day, right? So why I was upset was because here I am eating 7,000 calories a day, right? An impossibility it felt like at that time. It's painful. Right. I'm putting my body through all of this stress and you're telling me you don't have faith in me that I could do it. So I told him, I said, look, y'all coming back in 5 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. He said, yeah, sure. I said, okay, well come back in 5 weeks, look at my body. If you think I need a fat suit, let's put it on. So in 5 weeks, I put on 50 pounds and we didn't need the fat suit.
Wow.
Yeah. Cut my fro and everything.
Next time you need a fat guy, you just call me. No, one question I really, really wanted to ask you, and I think this is like one of the most brilliant aspects of the film, is what Chimamanda Adichie calls the danger of a single story. My whole life, I've been told George Foreman's story through the lens of Muhammad Ali.
Yes,
How Ali defined
exactly.
Foreman. That one fight is sometimes outshadows the fact that George was the oldest heavyweight champion that we've had to date, right? So could you talk about that aspect of the film and how do you think his narrative is going to change after this comes out?
Well, that's one of the most exciting things about doing this film, right? And that's what excited me about telling this narrative. Because even before I saw this script, I was always asking myself, what about George Foreman's story? Like, because we're always overlooking him because again, he was the hurdle that Ali had to get over.
Right.
So when I read his autobiography, I was floored. I couldn't believe the story this dude had. I didn't even know he was an Olympic champion, right? And that journey from poverty to becoming an Olympic champion in 1 year from the first time he put gloves on, an impossibility, right? To then becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. Another impossibility, right?
He's a phenom.
He's a phenom. But his fighting style, right, what I thought would be exciting to do with this film was to show that Mr. Foreman actually could fight. People called him a zombie that thought he was just a slugger. But he's probably one of the most smartest fighters that ever stepped foot in the ring. And that's why he's George Foreman. Not because he could just knock people out, but because he was a smart fighter. That's why he can come back and he could win the heavyweight championship belt again in his 40s. Not because he was a slugger, but because he's a smart fighter. And what I am really hoping that people learn about him and hopefully about themselves is that, when you're not only follow the path, right? Your purpose, because your dream and your purpose can be two different things.
Absolutely.
Right? But that when you're really true to who you are, that purpose won't falter. And you'll get the things that you want, and you'll get the things that you're asking God for, if you believe in God, or whatever whatever you called to, you know, and that the only thing stopping you really is you sometimes.
You feel like this role changed you?
I do feel like this role changed me tremendously. Doing this role felt like an impossibility for me, because how could I do the scope of this man, right? In this short amount of time that I had to train, to then film, that felt like an impossibility. So it challenged me in ways as an actor and as an individual that I didn't think that I would be able to accomplish. Not at this point in my life. I thought I was going to have to go through much more, but this put me through the ringer, man.
So when you were getting back in shape after the film, did you use the Foreman grill? Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to use mine with the. I learned how to cook on it without closing it. The things was everywhere, man. I bring that back.
I didn't use it. They should bring it back. They should bring it back. Actually, no, I didn't use the Foreman grill after filming. I didn't even get a Foreman grill. Somebody gave me a Foreman grill. We're
gonna sell you a Foreman grill.
I appreciate that, man. No, I did use the Foreman grill though in college though. I made everything on that, man. You know, that thing is so thorough. You could make ramen noodles on a Foreman grill.
Nice with it.
You know.
I think your performance in Big George Foreman was as transformative as your performance in Death of a Salesman. Do you have a preference between the camera and the stage?
I thought that I did before doing George Foreman, right? Because in theater, there's a lot of stories that have been well fleshed out. They have a strong legacy, like Death of a Salesman. So being a theater actor, you know, I go to theater for the intellectual integrity of the story, right? And I thought that I would go to film to put pieces together and hopefully tell a full story. But after doing George Foreman, that idea has changed. I now have been schooled in a way to what is possible when it comes to telling a full scope story, well fleshed out story on film. They both require immense work and discipline to do. I mean, Death of a Salesman, one of the great American plays of all time, you know, to play Biff on Broadway, never thought that was ever gonna happen. Wanted it to, hoped that it would, but that job was extremely difficult, not just because of the play itself, but there's a huge responsibility to the emotional context of the story and that journey. And I take the journey of the story very seriously. So for me, it doesn't matter what modality you're telling the story is the most important part of it.
Absolutely. For me, the story, it changed when you made it black. It switched the whole dynamic because it's brilliant. Like in a way of switching the character from white to black changes it makes everything more urgent. It makes your place in America different. It makes what you're trying to push towards different. It changes this whole social context of how we know and appreciate the play in its original form. Yes. I had a great time, but thank you for coming in. Please tell everybody where they can see the film when it comes out.
You can see the film April 28th in theaters only. So don't go to Hulu and Apple and all of that. Get in your car, go to the theater and get your tickets. Big George Foreman.
Big George Foreman. Thank you, Khris.
Thank you.